My name is Myra Wells, and I'm 28 years old. 6 months ago, I flew from Los Angeles to Boston for my sister Victoria's big day. When I arrived at the venue and said my name, the staff looked confused. They flipped through the guest list once, twice, then looked up at me with pity. "I'm sorry, ma'am, your name is not here." I called my sister to ask. She sneered through the phone. "You really think you'd be invited?" So I left quietly. I placed a gift on the table, just a small silver box. Hours later, when Victoria opened it in front of 400 guests, she saw what was inside, and she hasn't stopped calling since. But I never answered. Before I tell you what was in that box, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. To understand why that gift destroyed everything my sister built, I need to take you back to when I first realized I was never really part of this family. I grew up in a 3-story colonial house in Beacon Hill, Boston. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family, wealthy, respected. The kind of people who summered on Martha's Vineyard and donated to the right charities. But inside those walls, there were 2 daughters, and only one who mattered. Victoria was 3 years older than me. She had the bigger bedroom, the designer clothes, the piano lessons, the dance recitals our parents actually attended. I got the hand-me-downs and the silence. My 10th birthday was when I finally understood my place in this family. I'd been counting down the days. Double digits felt important. I imagined balloons, a cake with my name on it, maybe even a party like Victoria had gotten, the one with the pony and the catered lunch and 40 kids from her class. That morning, I woke up early and ran downstairs. The kitchen was empty. My mother was on the phone, planning Victoria's upcoming cotillion. My father had already left for work. Neither of them looked up when I walked in. "Mom," I said, "it's my birthday." She covered the receiver. "I know, sweetheart. We'll do something later." They never did. But that evening, there was a knock on my bedroom door. It was Grandma Eleanor, my father's mother, holding a small wrapped box. "Happy birthday, my darling girl," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. Inside was a camera. Not a toy, a real one, with a leather strap and a silver body that felt heavy in my small hands. "You have an artist's eye, my dear." She touched my cheek. "One day the world will see what I see in you." I didn't know it then, but that camera would change my entire life. And Grandma Eleanor? She knew exactly what she was planting. 8 years later, I graduated high school with a full scholarship to the Rhode Island School of Design, one of the best art programs in the country. I thought maybe, finally, my parents would notice me. The ceremony was on a Saturday afternoon. I'd been selected to give a short speech about pursuing your passion. I practiced for weeks, imagining my mother's proud smile, my father's firm handshake. The morning of graduation, I came downstairs in my cap and gown. Victoria was at the kitchen table scrolling through her phone. My parents were huddled over my father's laptop. "The ceremony starts at 2, I said. "We should leave by 1 to get good seats." My mother didn't look up. "Sweetheart, something came up." "What do you mean? My father finally glanced at me. "Victoria has a networking event with Goldman Sachs. It's a huge opportunity for her career. We can't miss it." I stood there in my graduation gown, clutching my speech notes. "It's my graduation." "Photography isn't a real career, Myra." My father's voice was flat. "Maybe you should think about business school like your sister." Victoria smirked but said nothing. I walked to that ceremony alone. I gave my speech to a room full of strangers, and when they called my name to receive my diploma, I looked out at the audience and saw only one familiar face. Grandma Eleanor. Front row, clapping louder than anyone. Afterward, she took my hands in hers. "Remember, sweetheart," she whispered, "the greatest treasures aren't always the ones people fight over. Sometimes they're the ones quietly passed on." I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. But I would. Years later, Standing outside my sister's wedding with a silver box in my hands, I would understand everything. After graduation, I packed 2 suitcases and bought a one-way ticket to Los Angeles. I didn't say goodbye. There was no one to say it to. For the next 10 years, I built my life in silence. I started as an assistant to a wedding photographer, carrying equipment and adjusting lighting. I learned everything I could. I saved every penny. And slowly, client by client, I built something of my own. My family never asked about my work. To them, I was still Myra who takes pictures of strangers. Victoria called occasionally, not to check on me, but to update me on her achievements. Senior marketing director at 29, corner office, engaged to a hedge fund manager. Every conversation was a performance, and I was her only audience. I just closed a 7-figure campaign, she said one evening. What about you? Still doing those little photo shoots? I was sitting in my office at the time, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown LA. The one with awards on the walls and a client list that would make her head spin. I'm doing well, Victoria. Congratulations on your campaign. Thanks. Mom and Dad are throwing me a celebration dinner next week. Obviously, you're not invited. It's just immediate family. I let that sink in. Immediate family. Of course, I said. Have a wonderful time. I hung up and looked around my office. Everlight Studios. My company. $3 million in revenue last year. Celebrity clients. Magazine features. A team of 12. Victoria had no idea. None of them did. And for a long time, I told myself I didn't care. I told myself their approval didn't matter anymore. But then Grandma Eleanor died, and everything changed. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing contracts when my phone rang. A Boston number I didn't recognize. Miss Wells? This is Harrison Lawson, your grandmother's attorney. I'm sorry to inform you that Eleanor Hartwell passed away last night. The world stopped. Grandma Eleanor was 82. She'd been slowing down for years, but I always thought there'd be more time. One more visit, one more phone call, one more chance to tell her how much she meant to me. I flew to Boston that same day. The funeral was held at Trinity Church, filled with hundreds of people whose lives she'd touched. Grandma Eleanor had been a prominent arts patron. She'd funded galleries, scholarships, emerging artists. She believed in beauty and the people who created it. I sat in the 3rd row, alone. My parents were in front, accepting condolences. Victoria stood beside them in a black designer dress, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. But I noticed something. Between the sympathetic hugs, Victoria kept glancing at my mother, and my mother kept glancing at my father. They were whispering about something. The jewelry collection, I heard Victoria say. Have you talked to the lawyer about when we can— Not here, my mother hissed. We'll discuss it after. I stared at Grandma Eleanor's casket while my family counted her possessions like inventory. She deserved better. We all did. After the service, as people filed out, a hand touched my shoulder. Mr. Lawson, the attorney, gray-haired, kind eyes. Miss Wells, he said quietly, could you stay after? There's something your grandmother wanted you to have. My heart clenched. Of course. I had no idea that what he was about to show me would change everything. Mr. Lawson led me to a small office at the back of the church. He closed the door and sat across from me, a manila envelope in his hands. Your grandmother came to see me 2 years ago, he began. She was very specific about her wishes. What I'm about to show you is separate from her public will. He slid the envelope across the table. Inside were 2 documents and a letter. The first document was a notarized amendment to her estate. I read the words 3 times before they sank in. The Hartwell jewelry collection, her entire collection, valued at $2.3 million, was mine. Not Victoria's, not my mother's, mine. My hands trembled as I opened the letter. My dearest Myra, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But I need you to understand why I've made this choice. Victoria sees these pieces as trophies, status symbols to be displayed and envied. But you, my darling girl, you see their history, their meaning. You understand that beauty isn't about possession, it's about preservation. Your mother and sister will be angry. They'll say I made a mistake. But I've watched you grow into someone remarkable, even when no one else was watching. These pieces belong with someone who will honor them. They belong with you. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. There's one more thing, Mr. Lawson said gently. Your grandmother requested that this remain confidential until you decide the right moment to disclose it. I nodded, unable to speak. I tucked the documents into my bag and walked out of that church with a secret that would sit in my heart for 6 months. I didn't know then that I'd be using it at my sister's wedding. 3 months after the funeral, I heard the news. Victoria was engaged. Marcus Thornton, old money from Connecticut. His family owned half the commercial real estate in New England. It was the kind of match my parents had always dreamed of. Wealth marrying wealth, status cementing status. The wedding would be at the Grand Belmont Hotel in Boston. 400 guests, a 6-figure budget, every detail planned to perfection. I waited for my invitation. Weeks passed. Nothing. I checked my mail every day. I refreshed my email constantly. I told myself there must be a delay, that surely my own sister wouldn't. Finally, I called my mother. Mom, I haven't received my invitation to Victoria's wedding yet. Should I RSVP directly to her, or? There was a long pause. Myra, my mother's voice was careful. Victoria wanted me to talk to you about that. My stomach dropped. It's just, the wedding is very intimate. Victoria felt it would be better if you didn't attend. Intimate, I almost laughed. I saw on her Instagram that there are 400 guests. Another pause. You know how you can be at these events. Awkward. We don't want anything to distract from Victoria's day. I sat in silence, the phone pressed to my ear. I see, I said finally. Thank you for letting me know, Mom. I hung up. That night, I scrolled through Victoria's social media. Photos of her dress fitting, her engagement party, her registry at Tiffany's, comments from hundreds of people congratulating her, 400 guests, but not a single seat for her own sister. I stared at my phone for a long time, and then I made my decision. Now I need to ask you something. If you were in my shoes, if your own family banned you from your sister's wedding and lied about it being intimate, what would you do? Would you show up anyway? Would you walk away forever? Would you do something else entirely? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what you'd choose, and while you're thinking about it, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Because what I did, no one saw it coming. I booked my flight 3 days before the wedding, Los Angeles to Boston. One way. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't ask permission. I simply packed a small bag and prepared the one thing I needed to bring. A gift. It sat on my kitchen counter in a silver box with a white ribbon, small enough to fit in my purse, light enough that you'd never guess what was inside. The night before my flight, I couldn't sleep. I kept asking myself if I was doing the right thing. Part of me wanted to stay home, to protect myself from another rejection, to pretend I didn't care, but I did care. That was the problem. For 28 years, I had been invisible to my family. I had accepted their dismissal, their favoritism, their casual cruelty. I had built a life 3,000 miles away and told myself it was enough. It wasn't. I wasn't flying to Boston for revenge. I wasn't going to make a scene or ruin Victoria's day. I just wanted to do one thing. I wanted to give my sister a wedding gift. I wanted to be seen, just once, as someone who existed. At 6 in the morning, I put on a simple navy dress, applied my lipstick, and looked at myself in the mirror. You can do this, I whispered. I picked up the silver box and tucked it into my bag. I didn't know what would happen when Victoria opened it. I didn't know if it would change anything or nothing at all, But I knew I couldn't keep carrying this secret forever. Some truths need to come out, and Grandma Eleanor had trusted me to find the right moment. As my plane lifted off the runway, I realized the moment had finally come. The Grand Belmont Hotel was everything I expected and more. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, enormous floral arrangements in the lobby that probably cost more than most people's rent. A string quartet played softly near the entrance, while guests in designer gowns and tailored suits streamed toward the ballroom. I stood at the edge of it all, clutching my silver box. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I smoothed my dress, dusty rose, modest, elegant, and walked to the reception table. Two young women in black sat behind a guest list that looked like a small novel. "Good afternoon," I said. "I'm here for the Wells Thornton wedding." "Of course. Name, please?" "Myra Wells. I'm the bride's sister." The woman smiled and looked down at her list. Her finger traced the W's, once, twice, a third time. The smile faded. "I'm sorry, ma'am, your name isn't on the list." "Could you check again?" "WELLS." She flipped through several pages. The other receptionist leaned over to help. "There's a Harold Wells," she said, "a Patricia Wells, a Victoria Wells, soon to be Thornton, but—" She looked up at me with something like pity. "No, Myra." The ballroom doors were open behind them. I could see white tablecloths, towering centerpieces, hundreds of people laughing and drinking champagne, 400 guests, but my name wasn't on the list. The receptionist shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, is there someone I could call for you?" "No," I said quietly. "That's all right. I'll handle it myself." I stepped away from the table and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady as I dialed Victoria's number. It rang once, twice, and then my sister answered. "Hello?" Victoria's voice was sharp, impatient. Behind her, I could hear the buzz of the cocktail hour, glasses clinking, music playing, laughter. "Victoria, it's Myra." A pause, then a sigh. "What do you want? I'm kind of busy." "I'm at the hotel. My name isn't on the guest list." Silence. I waited. "I know," she finally said. "That's because you weren't invited." Even though I'd expected it, the words still landed like a slap. "I'm your sister." "And?" Victoria laughed. A cold, brittle sound. "You really think you'd be invited? This wedding is for people who matter, Myra. Important people, not someone who takes pictures for a living." I closed my eyes. "I flew across the country." "That's your problem, not mine. I didn't ask you to come, you. I just wanted to give you a gift, to wish you well." "A gift?" She snorted. "What could you possibly give me that I don't already have? Let me guess. A homemade photo album? A coupon for a free portrait session?" I said nothing. "Let me make this clear," Victoria continued. "No one wants you here. Not Mom, not Dad, and definitely not me. You've always been an embarrassment to this family. Go home, Myra. Go back to your little life in California and stop pretending you belong in mine." I stood in the hotel lobby, surrounded by strangers, and let her words wash over me. I could have fought back. I could have yelled, cried, begged, but I didn't. "I understand," I said. My voice was calm, even. "I'll leave your gift at the reception table." "Fine, whatever, don't cause a scene." She hung up. I stared at my phone for a moment. Then I smiled, because I knew exactly what was in that box, and I knew exactly when she'd open it. The gift table was a masterpiece of excess. Hundreds of wrapped boxes in every size: Tiffany blue, Hermes orange, glossy white with golden bows, crystal decanters, silver frames, envelopes that undoubtedly contained checks with many zeros. I walked toward it slowly, my silver box in hand. The receptionist who had turned me away watched from her post. Her expression was uncertain, sympathetic maybe, or just confused by the woman who'd been rejected but hadn't left. I found an empty spot near the edge of the table and set my gift down. It looked small among the grandeur, humble, easy to overlook, easy I pulled a card from my purse and tucked it under the ribbon. To Victoria, from your sister Myra. Ma'am? I turned. The receptionist had approached, her voice gentle. Are you sure you don't want to stay? I could try to speak with the wedding coordinator, maybe. No, thank you. I gave her a small smile. Some gifts speak louder when the giver is absent. She blinked, clearly unsure what to make of that. I took one last look at the ballroom doors. Somewhere inside, my family was celebrating. My mother was probably complimenting Victoria's dress. My father was probably shaking hands with important people. And Victoria was probably glowing, basking in the attention she'd always craved. None of them were thinking about me. That was fine. They would be thinking about me soon enough. I turned and walked through the lobby, past the chandeliers and the string quartet, and the beautiful people in their beautiful clothes. I didn't look back. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and clean. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and booked the next flight to Los Angeles. As my taxi pulled away from the Grand Belmont, I smiled. The reception would start any minute now, and soon Victoria would reach for my gift. But before I tell you what happened next, I need to take you back 2 months. Back to the moment when fate, or perhaps Grandma Eleanor's spirit, decided to play one final card. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I was at my desk, reviewing invoices, when my assistant knocked on my door. Myra, you have a call. Someone named Caroline Ashford? My heart skipped. Caroline Ashford was a legend in the wedding industry, owner of Ashford Events, the most exclusive wedding planning agency on the East Coast. She'd coordinated ceremonies for senators, celebrities, old money dynasties. She'd also been Grandma Eleanor's closest friend. I picked up the phone. Mrs. Ashford, it's been a long time. Too long, my dear. Her voice was warm, familiar. Eleanor spoke of you constantly, you know. She was so proud of what you've built. My throat tightened. Thank you. I'm calling because I have a bride in Boston who needs a photographer, very particular, very demanding. She wants the best, and I told her Everlight Studios is the best. I appreciate the referral. There's one thing you should know. Caroline paused. The bride is your sister. I sat very still. Victoria signed the contract last week, Caroline continued. She has no idea you own the company. She just saw our portfolio and fell in love with the work. You knew, and you still recommended us? Your grandmother would have wanted this, Myra. She always said the truth finds its own way out. Caroline's voice softened. The contract is already signed. $15,000, non-refundable deposit. Whether you show up personally is entirely your choice. I stared out my window at the Los Angeles skyline. My sister had hired me. She'd signed a contract with the company she didn't know I owned. And she had no idea. There was something else Victoria didn't know. 1 month before the wedding, she'd hosted a bridal brunch. I heard about it through Caroline, who heard about it through the Boston social circuit. 30 women, a private room at the Four Seasons, champagne and crustless sandwiches, and Victoria holding court like a queen. The topic of conversation? The Hartwell jewelry collection. Grandma's pearls will be my something old, Victoria had announced to the room. The collection is worth over $2 million. It's been in our family for generations. How wonderful that it's going to you, someone said. Well, obviously. Victoria had smiled. I was always Grandma's favorite. She knew I would appreciate those pieces properly, not like my sister, who wouldn't know a Cartier from a costume piece. My mother had nodded along, sipping her mimosa. Your grandmother would want you to have them, sweetheart. You were always the one she was proudest of. What neither of them knew, the collection was already mine. It had been mine for 6 months. Victoria had contacted Mr. Lawson multiple times, trying to claim the jewelry before the wedding. He'd politely deflected, citing ongoing estate matters. She assumed it was just paperwork delays. She'd even commissioned a custom display case for her dressing room, ready to receive her inheritance. She'd told Marcus's family about the collection, Old money impressed by old jewels. She'd told her friends. She'd probably already planned which magazines to show them to. And all of it was built on a lie she didn't know she was telling. She believed she was entitled to those pieces. She believed Grandma Eleanor had loved her best. She was about to find out how wrong she was. And 400 of Boston's finest would be watching when she did. Now, back to the present. My taxi dropped me at Logan Airport just as the sun was setting over Boston Harbor. The reception would be starting soon. Dinner service, toasts, the cutting of the cake. And at some point, according to our family's tradition, the bride would open gifts. I found a seat in the airline's VIP lounge and ordered a coffee. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched planes lift off into the orange sky. My phone sat on the table in front of me. Silent. No calls. No messages. Not yet. I thought about Grandma Eleanor. About the way she'd looked at me when no one else did. About the camera she'd given me when I was 10 years old. The one that had started everything. The greatest treasures aren't always the ones people fight over, she'd said. Sometimes they're the ones quietly passed on. I understood now. She'd known exactly what kind of woman Victoria would become. She'd known my parents would always choose my sister over me, and she'd made sure that when the moment came, I would have the truth on my side, not revenge, just truth. I sipped my coffee and checked my watch. 7:45. The cocktail hour would be over. Guests would be seated. The MC would be warming up the crowd, preparing to invite Victoria and Marcus to open a few special gifts before dessert. My silver box was waiting. Inside it, a copy of Grandma Eleanor's will, her letter to me, a photograph of us together at her favorite jewelry shop, and a single folded sheet of paper, a copy of the Everlight Studios contract, with my name clearly printed at the bottom. I smiled to myself. Any minute now, any minute, Victoria would reach for that box, and nothing would ever be the same. Let me tell you what was happening at the Grand Belmont while I sat in that airport lounge. The ballroom was magnificent. 100 tables draped in ivory linens, centerpieces of white roses and hydrangeas reaching toward the crystal chandeliers. A string orchestra playing softly as waiters in white gloves served the third course. 400 guests, Boston's elite, the Thorntons' extensive network, Victoria's carefully curated collection of impressive friends. And at the center of it all, my sister. She was radiant in her custom Vera Wang gown, diamonds sparkling at her throat and wrists. Marcus sat beside her, handsome and adoring, exactly the kind of husband she'd always said she deserved. My parents were at the head table, beaming. My mother kept dabbing at her eyes, overwhelmed with pride. My father shook hands with Marcus's father, two patriarchs sealing an alliance. Nobody mentioned my name. Nobody noticed the empty chair that should have been there. During the cocktail hour, Victoria had circulated through the room, accepting compliments and air kisses. When someone asked about the jewelry she was wearing, she'd leaned in conspiratorially. Just wait until you see Grandma's collection. I'm inheriting it, you know, over 2 million in heirloom pieces. I'll be wearing the pearls to the Met Gala next spring. Her guests had oohed and awed appropriately. Now, as dessert was being served, the MC took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a special moment. Our beautiful bride and groom would like to open a few gifts before we cut the cake. Victoria clapped her hands in delight. Marcus smiled beside her. A table piled high with presents waited nearby. And sitting at the edge, almost hidden among the Tiffany boxes and Hermes packages, was a small silver box with a white ribbon. Victoria didn't notice it. Not yet. Victoria floated toward the gift table like a queen approaching her throne. "Let's see what treasures await," she announced, and the room laughed politely. She opened the first box, a crystal vase from Baccarat. The second, a set of sterling silver candlesticks. Each gift received a gracious smile and a murmur of appreciation. Then her hand landed on the silver box. She picked it up, glanced at the card, and let out a short laugh. "Oh, look," she said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. A gift from my sister, the one who couldn't even afford to show up properly. A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Marcus frowned slightly. Victoria? Let's see what she got us. A homemade coupon, probably, or one of her little photographs. Victoria untied the ribbon, still smiling for the crowd. She lifted the lid. Inside was an envelope, thick and official-looking. Her smile flickered. She pulled out the papers, unfolding them slowly. The first was a legal document covered in stamps and signatures. The second was a handwritten letter on cream stationery. The third was a photograph, an elderly woman and a young girl standing outside a jewelry shop. Victoria's eyes scanned the legal document. Her face went white, then red, then white again. What is it? Marcus asked, leaning over. Victoria didn't answer. Her hands were trembling. The letter slipped from her fingers and drifted to the floor. At a nearby table, Patricia noticed something was wrong. She stood up. Victoria? Sweetheart? Victoria looked up from the papers, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. This can't be real, she whispered. This can't. Grandma loved me. She would never. She stopped. 400 guests stared at her in silence. And sitting at the bottom of that silver box was one more piece of paper she hadn't unfolded yet. My mother reached the head table in seconds. What is it? What's wrong? Victoria thrust the papers at her with shaking hands. Patricia's eyes scanned the document, the notarized signature, the legal seal, the words that declared the Hartwell jewelry collection the sole property of Myra Eleanor Wells. The color drained from my mother's face. This has to be a mistake. It's not a mistake, Victoria's voice cracked. It's dated 2 years ago, before Grandma even got sick. Whispers began to ripple through the ballroom. The guests closest to the head table had seen enough. The bride's stricken expression, the papers trembling in her hands. Isn't that the jewelry she was telling us about earlier? Someone murmured. The $2 million collection? She said it was hers. Victoria heard them, her face twisted. This is fake! She held up the papers like evidence of a crime. My sister forged this. She's always been jealous of me. My father appeared beside my mother, his expression grim. Let me see that. He read the document. Then he picked up the letter from the floor. Grandma Eleanor's handwritten explanation. Victoria sees these pieces as trophies. Myra sees them as memories. I know who will honor my legacy. His jaw tightened. Harold? My mother's voice was thin. Tell me this isn't real. But my father didn't answer. He recognized his mother's handwriting. He knew her signature. He understood, perhaps for the first time, what Eleanor had seen in both her granddaughters, and what she'd chosen. This can't be happening! Victoria snatched the letter back, tears streaming down her face. Not today! Not at my wedding! Marcus stood frozen beside her, watching his bride unravel in front of 400 witnesses. He looked lost. He looked like a man who was just beginning to realize he didn't know his fiancée at all. Wait, Marcus's voice cut through Victoria's sobs. He was staring at the silver box. There's something else in there. Victoria looked down. At the bottom of the box, half hidden by tissue paper, was another folded document. She pulled it out with trembling fingers. It was a contract, a photography contract. The header read, Everlight Studios, Wedding Services Agreement. Victoria's eyes dropped to the signature page. Client, Victoria Wells. Owner-proprietor, Myra Wells. Amount paid, $15,000, non-refundable. She stared at it. No. Her voice was barely a whisper. No, no, no! Victoria? Marcus took the paper from her. His eyes widened as he read. You hired her company? You told me your sister was struggling, that she couldn't hold down a job. I didn't know, I didn't... Victoria spun around, wild-eyed. Where's the photographer? Where's the photographer? A young woman with a camera stepped forward nervously from the corner where the photography team had been working all evening. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm the lead photographer. Ms. Wells, Myra Wells is the owner, but she doesn't typically attend shoots personally. You work for her? The photographer nodded carefully. Everlight Studios has photographed over 200 weddings. We're one of the top firms in the country. The ballroom was completely silent now. 400 guests. Every single one watching Victoria's carefully constructed world crumble in real time. Someone at a nearby table pulled out their phone. Did she say $2 million? And the sister owns a photography company? The one Victoria's been calling a failure? Marcus was still holding the contract, his face unreadable. Victoria. His voice was quiet. What else have you lied about? Victoria couldn't answer. She was too busy reaching for her phone. She needed to call me. She needed to scream at someone. She needed to fix this. But some things can't be fixed. Okay, I have to pause here. Raise your hand in the comments if you saw that coming. Because honestly, even I didn't expect everything to unravel this fast. Victoria just found out that the grandmother she thought loved her best actually saw right through her. And the sister she called a failure? She owns the company that's photographing her wedding. If you want to see how this ends, and trust me, it gets wilder, hit that like button and stay with me, because Victoria's about to make a choice that will define everything that happens next. The whispers had grown into a steady murmur. Victoria stood at the head table, mascara streaking down her cheeks, the damning papers clutched in her hands. My parents flanked her like sentries, though they looked just as shell-shocked as she did. That's when Caroline Ashford stepped forward. She'd been watching from a corner of the ballroom, the elegant wedding planner who had orchestrated every detail of this perfect day. Now she walked toward the head table with the calm authority of someone who had seen it all. If I may. The room quieted. Caroline took the legal document from Victoria's trembling hands and examined it briefly. This is authentic, she said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. I witnessed Eleanor Hartwell sign this amendment 2 years ago. I was present when she discussed her wishes with her attorney. Patricia stepped forward. Caroline, you can't possibly. I can, Patricia. Caroline's voice was gentle but firm. Eleanor was my dearest friend for 40 years. She told me exactly why she made this choice. Then tell us, Victoria cried. Tell us why she would do this. Caroline looked at her with something like pity. She said, Victoria sees jewelry as trophies. Myra sees them as memories. She said your sister was the only one who ever loved her for who she was, not what she owned. The words hung in the air. At a table near the back, someone was definitely filming on their phone now. She also said something else. Caroline folded her hands. She said, Myra never asked me for anything. Victoria never stopped asking. That mattered to her. Victoria's mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time in her life, my sister had nothing to say, and 400 witnesses had heard every word. There's something else people should know. The voice came from the back of the room. A man in his 60s stood up, silver-haired, distinguished, wearing a suit that cost more than most cars. Richard Pemberton, CEO of Pemberton Media Group, one of Marcus's father's oldest friends. I know Myra Wells, he said. She photographed my daughter's wedding last year in Malibu. 600 guests. She was brilliant. A murmur swept through the room. Wait. A woman at another table raised her hand. Myra Wells? As in Everlight Studios? They shot our foundation gala. They've been featured in Vogue. More guests began to speak up. They photographed the Whitmore ceremony. I heard they're booked 2 years in advance. A friend told me she's turned down celebrity weddings because her schedule is full. Victoria's face was a mask of disbelief. That's impossible. Myra is... She takes pictures of strangers. She's nobody. Actually, Richard Pemberton said, not unkindly, she's quite successful. Her company did over $3 million in revenue last year. She's one of the most sought-after wedding photographers on the West Coast. My mother grabbed the back of a chair. $3 million? She looked like she might faint. My father stood very still, his face unreadable. But I knew that expression. He was calculating, re-evaluating, realizing just how wrong he'd been. "She never said anything," he murmured. "Why would she?" Richard replied. "From what I understand, your family wasn't particularly interested in listening." Victoria spun toward Marcus. "This doesn't change anything. She's still trying to ruin my day. She's still—" "Victoria." Marcus's voice was cold in a way I'm told no one had ever heard before. "Stop talking." His bride fell silent. And in that silence, the truth settled over the room like dust after an explosion. 3,000 miles away, my phone began to ring. I was still in the airport lounge, nursing my second coffee, watching the last light fade from the Boston skyline. The screen lit up with Victoria's name. I let it ring. She called again, and again, and again. 5 times, 10, 15. Then my mother's name appeared. Then my father's. The messages started flooding in. "Victoria, pick up the phone right now. Victoria, you ruined everything. Victoria, how could you do this to me? Mom, Myra, call me immediately. We need to talk. Dad, this is unacceptable. You will explain yourself. Victoria, I will never forgive you for this. Victoria, the whole room is staring at me. Victoria, what was in that box?" I watched the notifications pile up. The screen glowed with their rage, their desperation, their demands. 47 missed calls by the time I finished my coffee. I silenced my phone and slipped it into my bag. A gate agent announced that my flight to Los Angeles was now boarding. I gathered my things and walked toward the departure gate, past families reuniting and couples saying goodbye and business travelers typing on their laptops. Nobody in that airport knew what had just happened in a ballroom across the city. Nobody knew that a family was fracturing in real time, that a bride was crying in front of 400 guests, that a truth hidden for years had finally clawed its way into the light. I handed my boarding pass to the agent and walked down the jetway. But just before I turned off my phone, one more message arrived. Not from Victoria, not from my parents, from Marcus. And what he said made me pause. Marcus. "Myra, this is Marcus Thornton. I'm sorry to contact you like this. I got your number from the Everlight contract." I stood in the airplane doorway, passengers streaming past me, and read his words. "Marcus, I need to understand what happened tonight. Victoria is inconsolable, but she won't explain anything. She just keeps saying you betrayed her." Another message appeared. "Marcus, she told me you were mentally unstable, that you had issues and couldn't hold down a job, that your family had to cut you off for your own good." My chest tightened. "Marcus, I believed her. I never questioned it. I never tried to meet you or hear your side. I'm realizing now that was a mistake." A flight attendant touched my arm. "Ma'am, we need you to take your seat." I nodded and walked to my row, still reading. Marcus. The reception ended early. Half the guests left after Caroline spoke. "My parents are asking questions I don't have answers to. I don't know what to believe anymore." I buckled my seatbelt as the final message came through. Marcus, I'm not asking you to explain yourself. You don't owe me anything. But I wanted you to know, I'm sorry. For whatever part I played in this. For believing her without question. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back. Me. Thank you for reaching out, Marcus. I have no ill feelings toward you. Whatever you decide about your relationship, I hope you find clarity. His reply came almost instantly. Marcus, the wedding's over, but I don't know if the marriage will be. I need time to think about everything. I turned off my phone as the plane pushed back from the gate. Time. That was the one thing none of us could get back. The flight back to Los Angeles was quiet. I sat in my window seat, watching the lights of Boston shrink below me, thinking about Marcus's message, about Victoria's screams frozen in text, about my parents' demands that I explain myself. The thing is, I didn't have anything to explain. I hadn't forged those documents. I hadn't tricked Victoria into hiring my company. I hadn't done anything except deliver the truth that Grandma Eleanor had entrusted to me. The truth about the jewelry, the truth about who I had become, the truth that my family had refused to see for 28 years. Somewhere over Pennsylvania, I made a decision. I would not call Victoria back. I would not answer my parents' demands. I would not apologize or defend myself or beg to be understood. For my entire life, I had accepted their dismissal. I had made myself small. I had hoped that if I was quiet enough, good enough, successful enough, they would finally notice me. But I was done hoping. As the plane crossed over the Rocky Mountains, I wrote a note on my phone. Not a message to send, just words for myself. I won't close the door on them, but I won't hold it open forever either. They have to choose to walk through. That was my new boundary. If Victoria wanted to apologize, really apologize, I would listen. If my parents wanted to know me, really know me, I would give them a chance. But I would not chase them anymore. I would not perform my worth for people who had never bothered to look. I put my phone away and closed my eyes. By the time we landed in Los Angeles, the sun was rising over the Pacific. It felt like the beginning of something, or maybe the end. Either way, I was ready. I didn't find out about the video until the next morning. My assistant, Jenna, was waiting when I walked into the Everlight Studios office. She had her phone in her hand, and an expression somewhere between amazement and concern. "Myra, you need to see this." She turned the screen toward me. A TikTok video, already at 2 million views and climbing. The caption read, "Rich bride finds out her loser sister is actually a millionaire." Someone at the wedding had been filming. The video showed Victoria at the head table, her face shifting from smug to confused to devastated as she read the documents. It captured Caroline's speech. It captured the guests murmuring, Richard Pemberton's revelation about my company, Marcus's cold command for Victoria to stop talking. The comments were endless. The quiet ones are always the ones you underestimate. Grandma knew exactly who deserved that jewelry. This is the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. Victoria's whole life just got fact-checked in front of 400 people. I scrolled through thousands of reactions, strangers who had never met me, cheering for a woman they only knew from a 30-second clip. "Your name is trending," Jenna said quietly. Everlight Studios got 300 inquiries overnight. I sat down slowly. I hadn't wanted this. I hadn't filmed anything, posted anything, tried to go viral. I just wanted to be seen by my family. But now the whole world was seeing something. My phone buzzed. An email from a reporter at the Boston Globe. "Ms. Wells, we'd love to interview you about the viral wedding video." I deleted it. "Cancel my meetings today," I told Jenna. "I need some time to think." Because this wasn't over. This was just the beginning, and I had a feeling my family would be showing up soon. 3 days later, my mother appeared. I was in my office, reviewing proofs from a recent shoot, when my receptionist buzzed. "Ms. Wells? There's a woman here to see you. She says she's your mother." I closed my eyes for a moment, then I stood and walked to the lobby. Patricia Wells stood near the entrance, looking utterly out of place. She was dressed in her usual Chanel, pearl earrings, silk blouse, perfectly coiffed hair, but her eyes were red-rimmed and uncertain. She stared at the reception desk, at the awards on the walls, at the framed magazine covers featuring Everlight Studios. "This is yours?" she said when she saw me. "All of this?" "Yes. You never told us. You never asked." She flinched. I led her to my office and closed the door. She sat in the chair across from my desk, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I came to talk about what happened," I assumed. "You ruined your sister's wedding." Her voice cracked. "How could you do that to her?" "I wasn't at the wedding, Mom. I wasn't invited." "You know what I mean. That stunt with the gift." I leaned back in my chair. I gave her Grandma Eleanor's truth. The documents are real. The will is legal. Everything in that box was authentic. But why? Why humiliate her in front of everyone? I didn't humiliate her. She humiliated herself. I kept my voice steady. She spent months bragging about jewelry that was never hers. She lied to her fiancé about me. She told everyone I was a failure. My mother's face crumpled. Mom, I leaned forward. I spent 28 years being invisible to this family. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm just asking for honesty. She stared at me. And then, for the first time in my life, my mother actually looked at me. My mother's gaze traveled slowly around my office. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown LA. The awards displayed on the shelves, industry recognitions, magazine features, a framed letter from a senator thanking me for documenting his daughter's wedding. The photographs on the walls, each one a testament to a career built in silence. Her eyes landed on a picture of me with Grandma Eleanor, taken at her 81st birthday. We were laughing about something, our heads tilted together, and then Patricia Wells began to cry. Not the delicate tears she produced at social events, real sobs, ugly and raw, shaking her whole body. "We failed you," she said between breaths. "I failed you." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let her have the words. Victoria always demanded so much. She was loud about what she wanted, what she needed, and you were just quiet. You never complained, you never asked for anything. She wiped her face with trembling hands. I thought that meant you were fine. I thought you didn't need us. I stopped needing you, I said quietly, because I knew you wouldn't be there. She flinched like I'd struck her. I thought. She struggled to compose herself. I thought we were giving Victoria extra attention because she needed it more. But that wasn't true, was it? She needed it because we taught her to need it, and you stopped needing because we taught you not to hope. I said nothing. Eleanor tried to tell me. My mother's voice was barely a whisper. She said I was losing you. I didn't listen. I thought she was being dramatic. She looked at me with red eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me, Myra, but I needed you to know. I see it now. I see what I did. I let the silence hold, then I nodded. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Before she left, my mother told me about Victoria. Marcus postponed the honeymoon, she said, her voice hollow. He's staying at his parents' house. He says he needs time to think about everything. About whether he still wants to be married? My mother nodded miserably. The video made things worse. She pressed her fingers to her temples. It's everywhere. 3 million views now. People at Victoria's company have seen it. Her boss called her in for a meeting. They asked her to take a leave of absence until the situation quiets down. I felt a strange heaviness in my chest. Not satisfaction, not joy, just heaviness. There's more, my mother continued. Marcus's parents, the Thorntons, they called your father. They asked if there was anything else Victoria had lied about. They're old money, you know. They care very much about family reputation. And Victoria couldn't answer them. She tried. She said you had manipulated everything. That Grandma Eleanor wasn't in her right mind when she made the will. My mother laughed bitterly. But Caroline Ashford is friends with the Thorntons. She told them the truth. So Victoria had lost more than the jewelry. She'd lost Marcus's trust, his family's respect, her professional reputation, the perfect image she'd spent her whole life constructing. She blames you, my mother said. She says you destroyed her life on purpose. I didn't destroy anything, I just stopped pretending. My mother stood to leave, gathering her purse with shaking hands. At the door, she turned back. Eleanor always said you were the strongest of us all. Her voice cracked. I think I finally understand what she meant. She walked out. I sat alone in my office for a long time after that, watching the sun sink toward the Pacific. Strong wasn't how I felt, but I wasn't broken either. That evening, I stayed late at the office. The building was quiet. Everyone else had gone home. I sat in my chair, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline as it transformed from golden to pink to deep blue. On my desk was the photograph of Grandma Eleanor and me. I picked it up and studied her face, that knowing smile, those kind eyes that had always seen me when no one else did. "Did you plan all this?" I asked the empty room. Of course she didn't answer, but I could imagine what she'd say. "I just planted seeds, darling. You're the one who grew." I thought about my family, about Victoria, drowning in consequences of her own making, about my mother, finally opening her eyes after 28 years, about my father, probably recalculating everything he thought he knew about his daughters. I didn't want to punish them forever, but I couldn't go back to being invisible either. I made a decision, sitting there in the fading light. The door to reconciliation would not be locked. If Victoria genuinely apologized, not blamed me, not made excuses, but actually took responsibility, I would hear her out. If my parents wanted to know the real me, I would give them that chance. But I would not chase them. I would not perform for their approval. I would not make myself small to fit into the space they'd assigned me. They would have to come to me as equals, or not at all. I wrote it down in my journal. I won't close the door on them, but I won't hold it open forever either. They have to choose to walk through. That was my boundary. Clear, firm, unbreakable. For the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I deserved, and I wasn't willing to accept anything less. A week after my mother's visit, I went to the bank. The Hartwell collection was waiting for me in a private vault. 12 pieces of exquisite jewelry that had been in my grandmother's family for generations. Pearl necklaces from the 1920s, Art Deco diamond earrings, a sapphire brooch that had once belonged to a duchess. I held each piece carefully, thinking about the hands that had worn them, the stories they carried, the love they represented. Victoria had wanted these as trophies, status symbols to photograph and display and brag about, but Grandma Eleanor had seen them differently. "Beauty isn't about possession," she'd written in her letter. "It's about preservation." I understood now. I arranged for the most historically significant pieces to be loaned to the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, where they would be displayed in the decorative arts wing with a plaque honoring Eleanor Hartwell's legacy. The rest I would keep safe. One day, if I had children, they would inherit them, along with the stories of where they came from and what they meant. As I was leaving the vault, the bank manager handed me a sealed envelope. "This was in the safe deposit box as well, Ms. Wells. We didn't notice it before." Inside was a short handwritten note. "My darling Myra, one more thing I didn't tell you. I left Victoria something too. A small pearl bracelet that was my mother's. Simple, not valuable, but meaningful if she could understand its worth. I hope someday she will. Love always, Grandma Eleanor." I stood in the bank lobby and let the tears fall. Even in death, my grandmother had hoped Victoria might change. Maybe she would. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, I would honor Grandma Eleanor's memory the only way I knew how, by being the person she always believed I could be. 6 months have passed since Victoria's wedding. I'm still in Los Angeles, still running Everlight Studios, still building the life I created from nothing. The viral video eventually faded, as these things do. My name is no longer trending. The reporters stopped calling. But some things are different now. My mother calls once a week. Awkward, halting conversations at first, neither of us knowing what to say, but slowly, we're learning. She asks about my work. I tell her. She listens. It's a beginning. My father sent a letter, 3 pages, handwritten, apologizing for years of blindness. I haven't written back yet. I'm not sure what to say. But I'm thinking about it. Victoria and Marcus are in couples therapy. She called me last month, the first time since the wedding. She didn't apologize exactly, but she didn't attack either. She just said, "I'm trying to understand." Maybe that's all she can offer right now. Maybe someday it will be more. I've learned something through all of this. The best response to contempt isn't revenge. It's not proving them wrong or rubbing your success in their faces. It's building something real. It's protecting what matters. It's knowing your worth so deeply that no one's opinion, not even your family's, can shake it. I didn't show up at that wedding to destroy my sister. I showed up to finally be seen. And that gift I left on the table? It wasn't about tearing her down. It was about standing up. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you loved? What did it cost you? What did you gain? Drop your story in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't showing up. It's knowing when to walk away. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, please share it with someone who needs to hear this. And if you want more stories like this, check out the video in the description. I think you'll love it. Until next time, remember, you are worthy of being seen. Goodbye for now.